Okay. So we'll do the Maimer Ton Rabbanon Mitzvahs Ner Chanukah. This was said by the Rebbe on Motzei Shabbos Kodesh. That's Saturday night on the Shabbos Chanukah in the year Tovshin Lamed Ches. That's when the Rebbe said this Maimer. Later on, as they bring down, they published it. This Maimer was published in Tafshin Mem Zayin. There was a booklet, Kuntras Chanukah, and that was published for the Chanukah. And this includes this Maimer and the next Maimer, the Maimer Mitzvos Mishatishka. And as it says, this was Erev Chanukah Tafshin Mem Zayin. So these two Mamorim came later on in the book. But this is when the Rebbe said it was Motzei Shabbos Kodesh Shabbos Parshas Miketz Tovshin Lamed Ches. So he quotes here the Gemara. He quotes the Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara says like this: Ton Rabbanon. We learned in the Braise that mitzvahs near Chanukah. Chulu. What is the mitzvah of Chanukah? And in the Gemara, it brings down two opinions. Beis Shammai say, Yom Rishon Madlik Shmoino. On the first day, you light 8 lights. Mikan ve'elech, and from here and on, the second night, you do less. Poiches ve'hoilech, you do one less. So that means 8, 7, 6. That's the order. First night 8, and then we do one less every night that follows. That's the opinion of Beis Shammai. Beis Hillel Aimrim, but Beis Hillel say the other way around. As we do it, Yom Rishon Madlik Achas. On the first day we light one lamp, Mekan ve'elech, and then every day we increase. Moisiv v'hoilech. We add and we go on, always adding more. What's the reason for their dispute? So the Gemara says, time of the Beis Shammai keneged porei hachag. The reasoning of Beis Shammai is because this corresponds to the Purim, the bulls that they would bring on Sukkot. On Sukkot, the first day of Sukkot, the second day of Sukkot, the third day, they started off with 14, and then it went down to 13, to 12, 11. It went down every day. The Porei HaChag, you made less. So you see this concept of going down in numbers. And that's why, to correspond to the Purim, the bulls that you brought on Sukkot, same thing here. With the 8 days of Hanukkah, we bring one less every day. So we start with 8, then we go to 7, and so on. The time of the Beis Hillel, and what's the reasoning for Beis Hillel that we start with 1 and we keep on going on? Is the Mailim B'Kodesh Chulu, because we always know that we have to elevate in Kedusha, we have to always go higher, and we shouldn't really go less. So therefore, we want to increase and not decrease. So therefore, Beis Hillel say that we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. So we do ad diuk kveit kedushas admur hazokin. So we know the question, the point that was made by the Alter Rebbe in the Maimer in Torah Eir. It says, "Ma inyan ner Chanukah leporei hachag." What is the connection between the light of Hanukkah to the cattle, to the Purim of that we brought on Sukkot? You're saying that because on Sukkot they did it this way by the Purim, that's what we do by the Hanukkah. But what's the connection? And we'll see later on. The Maimon the Rebbe does explain the inner connection between the Neiros Hanukkah and the Porei HaChag in their spiritual accomplishment, as the Rebbe will explain. But the Alter Rebbe further brings ubefrat lefi ma shekosuv kveit kedushas ad murat tzamach tzedek especially according to what the Tzemach Tzedek writes, he points out that it seems that even Beis Hillel would go along with the reasoning of Beis Shammai that there is a connection, it should go like the Porei HaChag. It is only because it doesn't fit the rule of Mailim B'Kodesh to increase, so it doesn't go along with that. But this, that there is a connection between Hanukkah, the lights of Hanukkah, with the Porei HaChag, it seems like even Beis Hillel will agree to that. He disagrees because we have to go Mailim B'Kodesh. So that's what the Tzemach Tzedek adds. Shagam Beis Hillel loy pligi, that also Beis Hillel, they don't disagree. Rak only mishum the Mailim B'Kodesh, because we always have to go higher in Kedusha. Now, there is one obvious connection between Sukkot and Hanukkah. They're both 8 days, but that seems to be a superficial connection. And so what? What is the 8 days? And 8 days points also 7 is Hishtalshelus. 8 is above Hishtalshelus. But so why is Hanukkah above Hishtalshelus? Why is Sukkot? As the Rebbe will explain, because both of them are to impact even to the other side, to the Leumas at Sitra Achra. It has to come from the level of Soviv, as the Rebbe will explain. But here, the question is that Umashe Mavur Bekama Mekoimis. This, that is explained in many places. Sha'ashayich is the Chanukah L'Sukkah, that the connection L'Sukkah. The connection of Hanukkah to Sukkot is Sheshneim and Shmoina Yomim. They're both 8 days. The Mispar Shmoina Moire Al Bechino Shel Lemailom Mehishtalshlus. The number 8 points to a level which is higher than Hishtalshlus. Hishtalshlus is 7 days of the week, including Shabbos, and this 8 is higher than Hishtalshlus. Hareze Gufa. So that alone needs to be explained. Why are they both higher than Ishtalshelus? Why are they Mahu HaKesher? The Sukkos v'Chanukah l'Bechina shelamayla me'Ishtalshelus. What is the tie that both Sukkos and Chanukah are to the level? Why are they connected to the level which is higher than Ishtalshelus? Shemitzad zeh him shmeina yomim. That's why they're 8 days. Another question the Rebbe asks over here: why is Hanukkah set up to have 8 days when the menorah itself? So we're lighting 8 lights over 8 days, but the menorah itself had 7 lights. And also to understand this, that they instituted the lamps of Hanukkah. That is because of the miracle that took place in the lamps of the Migdosh. So that's why we're celebrating, so that they were able to light the menorah. Since in the Mikdash there were 7 lamps, why are there 8 lamps? Why are the 8 days? Now, of course, the miracle was for 8 days, as we say in the Gemara, but the question is conceptually. If we're talking about the menorah in the Beis Hamikdash, which we are commemorating, how is it that the Hanukkah menorah, which is commemorating the number 7 lights of the menorah in itself, is 8 days, is 8 lights? And also we have to understand further, we are not just saying that Hanukkah is compared to Sukkot. The lights of Hanukkah is compared to Sukkot. Sukkot is 8 days. But we're actually comparing it to the korbanos they brought on Sukkot. So what is the connection to the korbanos on Sukkot? We also need to understand Masha hafargleich. This is a Yiddish word. The comparison, hahashva, the comparison, the neiris Chanukah hu. It's not that we are comparing the lights of Hanukkah to the festival of Sukkot generally, but specifically to the bulls of the Chag of Sukkot that they brought. That's the connection. Why compare the menorah Chanukah, which is connected to the menorah, specifically to the bulls of the Yom Tov, of the Purim, of the Korbanos? Korbanos are Mizbeach. That's one keli on the Mizbeach. The menorah is a separate vessel in the menorah. And here we're saying the menorah and the korban and the mizbeach, we're connecting them. The lecheire hareineres Chanukah sheyachim lemenorah. It seems like the lamps of Chanukah, they are connected, they're associated, they belong to the menorah, because neres Chanukah heim mipnei haneis shehoyu b'neres ha-menorah. The reason we have the lamps of Hanukkah is because of the miracle that took place with the neiros of the menorah. And on the other hand, what is the bulls that they brought on Sukkot? They offered it as they did with all the korbanos. On top of the mizbeach. But the menorah umizbeach heim shnei kelim shonim. But the menorah and the mizbeach are two separate kelim. Two separate kelim of menorah and mizbeach. And how come we're associating? We're saying they're both 8. This is l'mal mishtalshlos. What's the connection? Obefrat lefi hamevur bekabbalah v'chasidus, especially according to what's explained in the Kabbalah and in Chassidus. Over there it says V'neiris v'karbonis avidus shoinus. B'chlal, the level, the lamps and the karbonis are different types of services. To the extent when the Pasuk says that Aaron didn't have an opportunity to bring the korbanos of the Nisim, like all the Nisim in the end of Parshas Nosei. So then the Pasuk says Bahalo Ischa. So the Pasuk tells him Ba'ad shel shalacha neiros gedela mishalahem korbanos. The Eibishter appeased Aaron for not being part of das korbanos. That the Eibishter told him, yours is greater. Lighting of the lamps, the neighbor is greater than their the korbanos. Chulu, to the extent explained that Einon betelim le'olam, these lamps are never, but they always go, even though it ceases the korbanos, they stop when the churban of the Beis Hamikdash, we don't have any more korbanos, but yet the lamps of the menorah keeps on going through the Neiros Chanukah that never stop. So we see that the neiros are higher than the level of the korbanos. So what's the association? Also, we need to understand Masha mitzvoso shel neiros Chanukah imishatishka hachama. We say that the Gemara brings down that when is the mitzvah to light the Chanukah light? Is when the sun sets. The Yedua Hadiyuk Bazeh, it's also known the question on this. The Neiris HaMikdosh Hidliku Miplag HaMincha. The lights of the Mikdosh were lit starting from Plag HaMincha. Plag HaMincha means a half of the time from when Mincha starts. So Mincha starts 2.5 hours before before nighttime. So 2.5 hours before is the time for mincha. Plag of mincha is half of the 2.5 hours, which is an hour and a quarter. So urivia koidem ashkia, that's an hour and a quarter before sunset. So that's when we have to light the Neiros Hamikdash. Bekivon sheneres Chanukah heim kenal mipnei hanes shoyu b'neiros Hamikdash. Since the lamps of Chanukah are, as mentioned earlier, we light them to commemorate the lights of the Beis Hamikdash. Mipnei hanes shoyu b'neiros Hamikdash, because the miracle that took place with the lamps of the Mikdash. So that why do we light from sunset? And in the Beis Hamikdash they lit it an hour and a quarter before sunset. Especially, we have a rule that the rabbis, when they came up with a new institution, they instituted something, they did it similar to the way they did the Torah. So since the Torah's lighting of the menorah starts with an hour and a quarter plaga mincha, why do the Neiros Chanukah that the Chachamim instituted start later from the sunset? It would seemingly be fit that the time of lighting them should be like the lamps in the Mikdash. So why is the mitzvah specifically when the sun sets? These are all the questions the Rebbe raises. The Rebbe is going to say that the purpose of these neiros are to illuminate the darkness, and in order to illuminate the darkness, you got to take from higher than Ishtalshus. The point for the explanation is the inyonom shel neiros Chanukah lahoir es hachoshech. The idea of Hanukkah lamps is to illuminate the darkness. Hine, for behold, hanes the Hanukkah hoyom. The miracle of Hanukkah took place after the Greeks entered into the sanctuary, into the Heichal, the room. V'timu, the room of the Beis Hamikdash. V'timu kol hashmanim shebeheichal, and they defiled all the oils that were in the Heichal, which means when we say they entered and defiled, that's an additional step in the darkness. First to go, for them to bechlal, enter into the Heichal, and then in the Heichal itself to defile the oil. The overpowering of the darkness of the Greek, of what took place, was to such an extent, not only did they enter into the Heichal and defile it, Elo shetimu gam as kol hashmanim shebeheichal. They also defiled all the oils that are in the heichal. That's how far they reached. What does it mean conceptually that they defiled the oils? The shemen hu bechinas kodesh. Oil is a level of holiness, as we say in the pasuk. The pasuk says, Shemen Mishchas Kodesh, the holy anointing oil. So the oil is called Kodesh. And there is, sometimes we say Kadosh, and sometimes we say Kodesh. Kadosh means higher than something. Kodesh from something else, which means it's exalted relative to something else. When you say Kodesh, it is holy, it's above, without a reference to something else. So Kodesh is Milei Begarmei, it's a much higher level. And that is bedugmas Hashem, similar to the physical attribute of oil shetzof al gabe kol hashmanim amashkim ve'ena misarev imohem. It floats on top of all liquids. It does not mix with the other liquids. That means it's kodesh, just like here by itself. It's a characteristic of oil to be distinct and separate, not to mix in with the other liquids, and therefore that is kodesh milu begamei. The mezeh move on from this. We understand shezeh shetimu es kol hashmanim shebeichol. The fact that they defiled the oil in the heichel, that represents more than even going into the heichel. More than defiling the heichel. They defiled the heichel and they defiled the oil, the kodesh. We understand. This that they defiled all the oils in the heichel is negeya befrat zeh. At this specific detail, it's important that is more than mizeh shetimu as heichel. From they were metamed heichel because they didn't only metamed the room, the place, but they did metamed the kodesh, the Hashem. Av shedar kedushas heichel hidarget na'alis be'eser kedushas. Although the heichel, to make the heichel tomei, that's a high level because the heichel itself, when the Mishnah counts the 10 kedushas, the 10 sanctities, Yerushalayim and the Harabayis, and the heichel is up there. Kodesh Kedoshim is higher, but it's up there amongst the sanctity, and yet the Shemen is even on a higher level. And also, it's evidence from this that it's even a higher level, that the fact, even after fixing the heichal, and yet they still needed to have the nes to go ahead and fix the problem with the oil, which means that it touched a deeper and a higher level. Kudamuchagam is also evidence from the fact after you children came back to the Beis Hamikdash, after they were victorious and they purified your Beis Hamikdash, your Mikdashecho, in order for them to be able to light the menorah, they required a miracle. They cleaned the heichal and they needed a miracle. Started off, the first miracle was the fact they could find one jug of pure oil, which was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, which is which means this miracle was the revelation of the infinite light, which is higher than Ishtalshus. Relative to that light which is higher than Ishtalshus, also darkness will not make dark. So the miracle was to be able to get the light of higher than Ishtalshus is a miracle, and there's no darkness over there, so you can find this one jug of pure oil. That's the higher Ishtalshus. Not only doesn't the choshech affect that light, but that light has the power to illuminate that lowest level of darkness. That light shines, illuminates the darkness. That also the darkness begins to shine, to be light. As we say, v'havaya yagia choshki. V'havaya, meaning the vav, the toisvus vav, meaning even higher than Havaya, which represents the level of Lamailo Mihashtalshlus, Betoisus Vehavaya, Yagi Hachoshki, that shines and illuminates my darkness. And this is the idea that Shaner Chanukah mitzvoso mishatishka hachamo davke. That's the concept that the light of Chanukah, the mitzvah, is when the sun sets. Why? Because the idea, what is the Neiris Chanukah? That is to illuminate the darkness. And this is also Masheneiris Chanukah hem shmoina davke. That's why the Neiris Chanukah is 8, because we're talking about Lamailo mihishtalshelus, and we need to bring about the light to illuminate the darkness. So we need the level of 8, because we need Lamailo mihishtalshelus. The Chen Yom of the Chanukah temanya inon. Also, there's early days of Chanukah. All these levels of 8. Shemispar Shmoina Moira, the number 8 points, Kinal Sif Aleph, as it said earlier in Sif Aleph, Al Bechina Shalemailo Mi Ishtalshlus, on a level which is higher than Ishtalshlus, Shemitzad Bechina Zu Davke, Efsher Lahoyir Gamas Achoshem. This, from this level specifically, we are able to illuminate also the darkness. That's why the level. So now we know why there's the level 8. We know why it's a darkness, because in order we get from the level of Gam Choshech Lo Yachshech, from the level of Hayel Shtalshlus, where darkness is not dark, and we get from that level to illuminate, to also bring down in the darkness, to turn the darkness into light. Gimel. In order to understand this idea, in service of man, in our service to HaKadosh, to Hashem, is Yuvon, by introducing that which is explained in the Mamorim from my father-in-law, the Rebbe. But there he explains, this that the Greeks defiled the oil that was in the Heichal, who mipnei shekol milchamtom hoiso milchameruchnis, because the entire war was a spiritual war. That's why they defiled the oil. This was a spiritual significance of defiling the oil, because they fought against in spirituality, against the spirituality of Yidden. They did not want to touch the physical, the body of the Jewish people. They're mostly what they wanted. They wanted to make the Yidden forget Torah, your Torah, and to forget the statues of Ritzonecha, which Hashem wants. So besides the fact that they wanted just mainly against Torah and mitzvahs, they wanted Lashkicham Torah Ulavurim Ritzonecha. Within Torah itself, they specifically objected to Torah Secho, your Torah, and the chukim and the statutes which are not rational, Ritzonecho, your will. This is what they objected, not so much on the mitzvahs and the Torah itself, but rather this above rationale part of what we do the Torah. Also, in this alone, that they fought against this spirituality, against Torah mitzvahs. In this, that they waged war against Torah mitzvahs. Their main war was neged haruchnius v'ha'elokus, the Torah mitzvahs. They fought against the spirituality and against the godliness of Torah mitzvahs. Torah mitzvahs has the practical, the understanding, the learning, the observance, the facts of the mitzvahs. but they fought against the spirituality which is in the Torah u'mitzvos. This is the meaning which we say in the davening. Lehashkichom Torah secho doesn't say just lehashkichom Torah, but it says to make them forget that it's your Torah secho davke, your Torah. Shagam lahayivonim lo hoya ichpat kol kach. Also to the Greeks, they didn't care so much. Yisrael Yilmadu Torah, that the Yiddish should study Torah. Elo Sharotzu, but what they wanted is Shalimud HaTorah Yierak Mitzad HaSeichel Shabbat Torah. They wanted the study of Torah should just be the intellect of Torah. Ki hi chochmaschem ubinaschem leinei ha'amim. The pasuk says that the Torah is the Jewish wisdom and understanding for the eyes of the nation. So the eyes of the nation, they agree and they understand the beauty and the intellectual part of Torah. But the whole Iker Milchamtom Hoysa, and their main war was Shabikshu Lashkichom Torah Secha. They wanted to, they seeked to make them forget that it's your Torah Lashkiach Chas V'Sholem Es Yisrael, to make, God forbid, forget, to have the Jews forget that the Torah is Hashem's Torah. Torah Secha. Well, there is in a similar way, the war of the Greeks when they waged war against mitzvahs. Shemilchemes hayivonim hoyso neged holokus shebemitzvahs. They waged war against the godliness which is within mitzvahs. Ma sheheya mitzvahs hem ritzoni yisborech. The fact that the mitzvahs are His blessed will. Both words, chuk and ritzonecha, express this idea that they were waging war to have them violate chukei ritzonecha. Chukim are the statutes which are not rational. Ritzonecha means your will. This is what they were against. Chukei ritzonecha. Chukei davke ritzonecha davke. Davke star ritzonecha. Shnei pirushim bazeh. There's two interpretations here. Sha'ala mitzvahs the edus umishpatim. On the mitzvahs that are testimonials, like Shabbos, Pesach, or mishpatim, logical rules, honoring your parents, liyosa mitzvahs sichliyos, they are logical mitzvahs. Iskimu gam hayivonim. The Greek also agreed to that. Their entire war was against the mitzvahs that are statutes. The way we observe the mitzvahs of chukim is just because they're the will of Hashem. They have no rationale, they have no symbolism, they're not edus, and they're not logical. And they fought therefore chukei ritzonecha. But yeah, there's another meaning. Chukei ritzonecha means the chukim of your will, meaning all the mitzvahs are Hashem's will. The part of those mitzvahs which are chukim, because the mitzvahs, even the rationale and even the testimonials, the edus, the symbolism, they too have parts which are chukim, and they fought against those chukim aspect of Hashem's will of the mitzvah. So pirush beis by mekyesa. And the second interpretation, which is deeper, the zeh mashebikshu lahavina mechuker etzenecho, is that they seek to have them transgress the statutes that you want to b'chol mitzvahs, also all the mitzvahs. Gam mitzvahs the edus mishpatim, also in the mitzvahs edus mishpatim, they wanted to take away from the rational and symbolic mitzvahs, the edus and mishpatim, the chukim aspect. The Rebbe explains now what's the chukim aspect. Dalit. The Yuvan Zal Pia Yadua will understand this based on what is known. Shagam HaMitzvahs the Edus Umishpatim. Also, those mitzvahs of the testimonials and those logical mitzvahs. Tzorich lekayim beikir mipnei shem rotzon havaya. Mainly, you should observe them because they're Hashem's will. K'moy hachukim. Just like statutes that have no reason, we do them because that's the way Hashem wants. The same thing is when we do mitzvahs which are logical, or we do mitzvahs that are symbolism and they're edus, they commemorate events. Still, we should do them not because the logical value or the commemorative value, but we should do them as a statute because that's what Hashem wants us to do. And this idea that you do the mitzvahs because they're statutes, that even the mitzvahs that have a reason, we need to fulfill them because they're will of Hashem. This is not just from the approach, from the perspective that the person who observes the mitzvah is doing it not because it makes sense, but it's doing it because Hashem tells him to. No. The mitzvah itself, that when a person fulfills the mitzvahs, it needs to be like a slave, the work of a slave. He does it because the master commands him to do so, not because he makes sense to him what the master wants him to do. When can you be fulfilling the mitzvahs like a slave? It's when you do the mitzvahs not because the rationale. That is specifically when he observes the mitzvah, not because of the reason and the rationale, but the master commands you. That is when you can do mitzvahs like an evet. That is the tzivui, the doing because Hashem commands. But it's more than that. That's from the perspective of the Yid who does the service of Hashem. He has to be doing it like an evet. But also in the mitzvahs itself, in the mitzvahs of chukim, of edus and mishpatim, elogam mitzad mitzvahs. But also from the perspective of the mitzvahs, there is the chukim part within the mishpatim. Kikol ha-mitzvahs, because all mitzvahs, gam ha-mitzvahs sheyesh aleim ta'am, even those mitzvahs that have a reason, heim ritzoni yizbarach, they're still the blessed will. Rotzin shelamaylo mahatam, there's a will which is beyond the reason. Verak shekach gozer HaKadosh Baruch Hu. All the mitzvahs don't have a reason, but the Eibishter decreed shaharotzin, this mitzvahs elu, that the will, his will of these mitzvahs, even though they're beyond the reason, yislav shugam betam, they should also be dressed up in reason. The truth, not only that, even the reasons, not only it is Hashem's rotzen that they come down the reason, but the reason is not fully encompassed, not really that we really understand fully. But also the reasoning of the mitzvahs, the real reason of the mitzvahs, not the reason, the part that we think that we understand a little bit, but the real reason of the mitzvahs, they're beyond the understanding of the human intellect. The amit is time mitzvah is the true reason for mitzvahs. Who k'moi shehem b'chochmasa yizbarach. That is in His blessed wisdom. That's the real reason. Hashem's chochma has the reason for the mitzvahs. Umekiv shegam chochmasa yizbarach ein sof. And since that also Hashem's chochma is ein sof, chochma the atzilus is ein sof. Especially as quoted from the Rambam, that the Eibishter in Chochmah dresses up in the Chochmah in Atzilus. It's Hu v'Chochmah Seyechad. So it means you have the Ein Sof in Chochmah, in the wisdom of Hashem, which is Chochmah. So we say that the Eibishter is there in the level of Chochmah, Harei Ein Shayich. So it doesn't even possible, it doesn't connect Sheseichel Mugbal Dan Nivroyim, that a limited intellect of the created being, Yuchal Lahasik Amitas Hatam da Mitzvahs, to be able to understand the true reason of mitzvahs. K'moshe Kosu be Geras HaKodesh, like the Alter Rebbe writes in the Geras HaKodesh. Shetayme HaMitzvahs Lo Nizgalu. The reasoning for the mitzvahs have not been revealed. And there's beyond intellect and understanding. That means even from the perspective, those who do have logic, we don't really understand the logic. So there's a lot more than the logic that we understand that we don't understand. They're really a level of rotzen. It's a rotzen to come down in logic, but that logic is also beyond our understanding. And even those places, also in some places in his Galev, in his Sparish, that it's been revealed and articulated some sort of a reason we do understand l'chayra. That reasoning which is understood, that is not the end, the goal, the finish. It's not all of the reason. And we know that the reason that we know is not really the whole thing. We still know that in every mitzvah, even though we think we know, there's so many details in the mitzvah that we don't know the reasoning. That means that even in the reason that we know, there is so much that there is still higher than reasoning. The inyan zeh, this concept, that this idea that the reason that we do understand is not the full, not the ultimate reason. We can also understand it in our human intellect that this is not the whole reason. Because it's a human intellect understands very simply that that a limited intellect has not the ability to grasp his blessed wisdom, which is unlimited. On the contrary, the question is, how do we understand a little bit? This, that in some places there is revealed and articulated some reason which is understood. That's a great surprise. That's a kindness of Hashem. So that also a human intellect should have some sort of a grasp of this. So the chiddush is not that we don't understand. We understand very logically. It's impossible for us fully to understand. And that which we do understand is surprising. How do we understand something? And even after, with the kindness of Hashem, it's been revealed and articulated a reasoning that is understood to us. But it's known. It's not the pshat that we understand fully all the details of the mitzvah. It's known shatam hurak al klolus hamitzvah. The reason is only on the mitzvah in general, v'loi al haprotim, but not on the specifics. The details of the mitzvah have not been articulated and not been understood. We don't know why each mitzvah, even though if we know the general idea of a mitzvah, in those cases where the mitzvah have been revealed. Shebekol move on from this, all we understand from all the above. Shagam ha-mitzvahs the eidus mishpotim, and even the mitzvahs which are called eidus mishpotim, hem kimoy chukim legabenu. So relative to us, they're like chukim. Mikivon shagam time ha-mitzvah shemitzat chachmos yizbarach, since also those mishpatim, the reasons of the mitzvahs, which is from the perspective of his blessed Chochmah, Vashem's Chochmah, hem l'mayla mesechel hanivroim, they're still beyond the intellect of the nivroim. So to us, they're like chukim. So that's the pshat of chukim. V'yiseirim mezu sheim ritzenecho. So first of all, they're like chukim because they're beyond our sechel, and they're rotzen. Shem ritzoyni yisborich shelamayla gam chachmos yisborich. They're Hashem's rotzen, which is even higher than his chokhmah. As he said before, that his rotzen was that they should dress up in the level of chokhmah, which to us is anyways in the level of chukim. This is the second interpretation, that when the Yevonim wanted to get them to violate, to transgress the Chukin Etzenecho, Ugam b'hamitzvahs the Eidus u'mishpatim. This also applies to the mitzvahs that are symbolism, that are Eidus, and logical mishpatim. Kigam hayevonim, because also the Greek, bikshu lakir chas v'sholem Yisrael, they wanted, God forbid, to uproot from the Yidden as a hergish or likisha b'mitzvahs, that sense of godliness in the mitzvahs. Shekol hamitzvahs hem chochmasa yizborich shelamaylo mesechel anushi. That all the mitzvahs are his blessed wisdom, which is higher than human intellect. They wanted to take away that idea. All of the mitzvahs are his blessed wisdom, which is higher than the intellect. And then is la vira mechuke. That is considered chukim, because all mitzvahs are essentially chukim. And then also ritzoy necho bikeshula koir chaz v'sholem esahergesh. And they, God forbid, they also wanted to uproot the feeling shamitzvahs heim ritzoy yizbarach, that they are Hashem's will, because it's even higher than Hashem's chokhmah. Ritzoy necho. That's what they tried to do. So according to the second shot, is even in the regular mitzvahs that we do, they wanted to take out that idea that this is something which is the Eibishter's wisdom, which is higher, that they're really chukim, and also take away that it's even higher than Hashem's wisdom, is the level of rotzen, and that's the part that they fought against. Hey, so now we understand the language of the Gemara. When they entered the Heichel, Timu kol hashmanim shebeheichel, they defiled all the oils in the Heichel. It doesn't mean that inadvertently they went in there and therefore they defiled the oils because they touched them, they were there. No, the mashmos haloshen hu, the mashmos of the language of Timu is shenichzu leheichel, that they attempted. This was a conscious attempt, that when they went into the Heichel, in a ishtadlu v'nis amtzu, they put an effort and they worked hard letamei es hashmanim, to defile the oils. Why did they want to do that? B'chdei l'natzeyach chas v'sholem es Yisrael. That way they wanted to be victorious, to beat up, to win against God, against the Jewish people. Heichel hu bina, because Heichel is the level of bina, where the oil is, and the oil hu bina v'shemen hu chochma shelamayla ma'aseichel de bina, and the oil is level of chochma which is beyond seichel of bina, which is already the part of seichel which articulates. This is level of chochma, the nekudus chochma, which is the oil. Canal Siv Beis, I said earlier, Shemen u'b'chinas kodesh. That is kodesh milibegarmei. That's the highest level. L'chein timu kol hashmanim shebeheichel dibina, and that's why they defiled all the oils that were in the heichel of bina. B'chdei lahafik chas v'sholem es mezimosum, in order to, God forbid, to accomplish what their evil intent is, lashkicham toirasecho lavira mechuker tzenecho, to make them forget. So there is bina itself is the Torah, represents the Torah, But that godliness of Torah, that's the Shemen, and they defiled it because they wanted to do what they were doing, to remove them from the godliness, the Torah Secha, Hashem's Torah, and the Ritzenecha, Chuk Ritzenecha. They wanted it just to be logically. So that's why they were metame, the shemen of the Heichel. That was their intent. That's what they were working on, to be metame the chokhmah that is in Bina, the chokhmah that is in the Heichel. In order to be victorious in this war, it's not sufficient the service of Hashem, which is based on reason and understanding and rationale. Not even such a service which is higher than reason and understanding, but it's tied to reason and understanding, which would be the two levels in the soul, the level of Chaya and Yechida. The level of Yechida is beyond the reason and rationale, but it's connected. The level of Yechida is totally removed. That would be higher than Tambadas, but it's connected to Tambadas. That's the Makif, the Chaya, which is Makif HaKorev. Why? It's not sufficient. Even the level of Makif the Chaya, we need Yechida. Why? Since they defiled all the oils in the Heichel. Hainu. That means defiling the oils means that they affected also the oils of the Heichel, also the higher than Tambadas. Hainu gam hoinyonim di kedusha. Shelamaylo metam vadas elu hakshurim tambadas. They also defile the Hashmanim and the Heichel, which means the matters of Kedusha that are higher than rationale, but they are tied to rationale. And how do you win the war? Why they have the Mesiras Nefesh Tafker, that is through the service of self-sacrifice, giving over your soul. The Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh, what is the concept of self-sacrifice? We're not only talking about giving up your actual life. We're talking about serving Hashem with such devotion, similar to giving up your life. The Inyan HaMesiras Nefesh, Hamida B'toikef, standing with self-sacrifice, Siras Nefesh, is standing with force against all those who hold back and they prevent. This is a strength of the essence which is entirely higher than the intellect, an inner strength above, higher than the intellect. Just like self-sacrifice to sanctify the name of Hashem, there is no logical explanation why you would do that. The only reason is it's a toikef atzmi. There's not possibility to be anything else. That comes from the connection and the tie of the essence of the soul, the tie of the essence of the soul with Hashem, your yichida, the yichida of the neshama, the inyan ha'iskashrus atzmi, that's tie, the essence who she yevsher li is klal, li is boifen achar chas v'sholem, that it is impossible at all to be any different. There's no way, this is the only way. And since in that level of the yichida of the soul, it doesn't apply any blemish, any impurity, God forbid. And this is similar to that one small jug of oil that was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, which means the outers, they can't touch that. That small pach Hashem, they can't touch that. The Mesiras Nefesh Shemitzad HaYichida. So through this service of Mesiras Nefesh that comes from Yichida, Al Yidei Zeh Davke Menatzchim Es HaMilchama. That's the way, Davke, that you win the war. The way to win the war is by the Mesiras Nefesh. You win the war. And it was by the actual war of the Greeks, through the self-sacrifice of Matisyo and his sons, although they were weak and they were few, so they had Mesiras Nefesh, literally. They stood there with a force with Mesiras Nefesh, and yet they stood with self-sacrifice, lehilochem, neged giborim verabim, to wage war against the mighty and the many. And that way they also impact the people of their generation, limser nafshom al kiddush Hashem, to give over their life to sanctify Hashem's name, not to violate, not to transgress the religion in any way. So by bringing out that level of Yechida, and they brought about the self-sacrifice, they were ready to give themselves up, and there was many against the few and strong against the weak. So they encouraged all of the people of the generation that we're going to stand strong, not to violate the religion in any way. So that's the way they actually were victorious. So the way they won the war was through standing with Mesiras Nefesh. So in order, and that's called the makif of Yechida. That's the pach. That's that little jug of the Kohen Gadol, which is the highest level of the soul, which is always connected to Hashem. And to bring out that into revelation was the way to win the war.